Hello, you're on Initiative Africa. My name is Asha Sampit and welcome to this new edition of your weekly magazine featuring Africa on the move through smart innovations and initiatives that work. Let's get on with the show with our top stories today. Fighting for better healthcare in Africa. A child from the diaspora rose up to the challenge. Bola Bardet, a graduate of a major business school, has chosen to strive for a better living for all Africans. She invented a new insurance concept for the diaspora and their relatives back home. She's our guest today.
Susu, a digital health service with a mission to bring affordable and accessible health solutions to the people of Africa.
Telemedicine consultations online and at home are now possible in Cameroon with the new Clinic Home platform.
It's an appreciable concept. We have already seen it elsewhere in more developed countries. We will not hesitate to recommend it to others wherever we can.
We put the spotlight on the world of the visually impaired in Yaoundé, Cameroon, where they discovered the potential for emancipation and inspiration led by an NGO.
We had to create a project to get the visually impaired and blind out of their comfort zone, their home, their sedentary lifestyle. The aim is to make the visually impaired become actors of their own emancipation and aspirations.
And we open this new edition with the all-important issue of healthcare. Last month, Yaoundé became the second city in Cameroon after Douala to benefit from the services of the Clinic Home digital platform. So, what is it? Well, its goal is to facilitate services such as home medical consultations, telemedicine, laboratory examinations, delivery of medication, nursing care, or physiotherapy, all without leaving home, an innovation implemented 4 years ago by Dr. Philip Ouanja. This is a report by Maxime Farrell-Bunia. Take a look.
Online consultation is just a click away. Stéphane, who has been in bed for a few days now, has taken the plunge thanks to the e-Santé Cameroon platform. With a smile, he tells us about his motivations.
The fact that medicine is provided at home, psychologically, is a change because we are always afraid to go to the hospital. Now the fact that someone comes to treat you at home, it's much different.
Alerted by a letter, Dr. Philip, accompanied by a nurse, went to his home. Here, everything starts with the taking of vital parameters before the actual treatment.
While administering the care, I anticipate the possible complications related to the diagnosis that I have made. Depending on the complications envisaged or conceivable, the plan is as follows. If I can safely treat him at home, I do it, as is the case with our patient. Or if I realize that it's not possible to treat him at home, and it's better to transfer the patient to an emergency unit or specialized emergencies, then eHealth has at its disposal means of medical vehicles to transport the patient safely to the hospital.
Like Stéphane, many of these patients are already benefiting from the services of this virtual clinic. It offers online consultations, teleconsultation, and home care, among other things. A life-saving innovation after months of testing in the healthcare sector.
The idea of creating Clinic Home, a virtual hospital, even comes from an observation that has been made in public, private, and denominational hospitals where we have practiced. It is mainly the waiting times that are increasingly prolonged, whether at the level of emergencies or routine consultations. Mainly for general practitioners, the waiting times continue to grow, yet among these waiting patients, some patients are much more serious than others and could have been treated elsewhere.
If the beginnings were complex in a country where internet access is still low, it must be said that the startup's success today puts a smile on the face of many. If the activity is no longer only virtual but also physical and employs 10 people full-time, nearly 200 others benefit indirectly and part-time. The aim here is to make life easier.
The home treatment that we provide in the virtual hospital Clinic Home at the same rate as in any clinic. We are not going to make financial considerations because medicine is not about that. We do not want to charge anything more than what is charged in hospitals.
Established in Cameroon about 4 years ago, this virtual hospital specializes in treating benign pathologies. More than 5 million people have already visited the e-santé website.
It's an appreciable concept. We have already seen it elsewhere in more developed countries. We will not hesitate to recommend it to others wherever we can.
While Clinic Home aims to provide all Cameroonian families with a family doctor who will take care of their follow-up checkups at home, the promoter intends to popularize the use of this platform in the long term.
To last 4 years in an activity like this, which is also innovative, you must necessarily have a return on investment. It's not necessarily that we will make these profits right away, but we manage to last because we build customer loyalty. We have more and more new customers and more new insurance companies that trust us, allowing us to have good performance indicators and believe that we will grow.
It's worth noting that the application has already reached nearly 5,000 people in Douala and Yaoundé, a windfall boosting the ardor of the designers who intend to make the service accessible to all. However, access to the internet remains an obstacle, given that the internet penetration rate varies only between 21 and 22% in Cameroon.
Well, we remained in the field of healthcare access, which is of so much concern in Africa. Bola Bardet, a native of Benin, experienced the loss of a loved one, which led her to create a service that provides the diaspora and their families with medical service packages to benefit from medical checkups and to treat themselves in Africa. Solutions for the continent's future that are expected to emerge on a wide scale, as she explained to Laurent Soustras and Thierry Schiller.
Bola Bardet, welcome to Initiative Africa. You run a rather peculiar insurance company. How would you describe it?
Bonjour Laurence. Donc je dirige Susu.
Hi Laurence, yes, I run Susu, a digital health service with a mission to bring affordable and accessible health solutions to the people of Africa. At Susu, we offer solutions designed for people with diabetes, high blood pressure, and pregnant women who are often a vulnerable population with very limited access to health care, and yet they desperately need it. And so we provide them with a combination of curative and preventive care from our digital platform to improve follow-up and health monitoring. In addition, and most importantly, we ask their relatives who are based abroad, in other words, the African diaspora, to finance or co-finance these services on behalf of one or several beneficiaries in their country of origin.
These products don't exist in Africa?
Non, non, non. Alors on est vraiment innovateur.
No, they don't. We are really innovative in what we do. I mean, in our approach, in both the service itself and its financing. So, for example, in terms of service, it's really a package of medical services we're going to offer. For pregnant women, it will be a set of prenatal and postnatal consultations, midwives' visit at home, checkups, and ultrasounds. And all this will be packaged. On top of that, they will have access to articles through our application and prevention videos on pregnancy. And finally, they have access to a chat room where they can ask any questions they may have, and a team of experts will answer to them. So that's the service aspect. And the funding side, we're also innovative because we rely on the financial manna from the African diaspora. More than 100 billion euros are sent every year by the diaspora to their relatives back home, including 20 billion dedicated to healthcare. So we count on these 20 billion euros to provide their relatives with quality healthcare and at the same time provide people in the diaspora with a guarantee that their money is being used wisely.
Which insurance products are most popular with your customers? Which ones are the most successful?
Alors, donc, comme je disais, on propose aujourd'hui 2 types de bouquets de santé.
Today we offer 2 types of health packages. We have a maternity package to monitor pregnant women. We have a chronic illness package, so it's diabetes and hypertension. And we also offer insurance as a broker in partnership with major insurers in the field. That I have not mentioned. I think I don't have the right to mention them. And the product that works best in terms of the insurance, it's a product called Susu Vital, an essential insurance policy that provides coverage of around 1,500 euros per year. So that's about 1 million CFA francs a year, covering almost all services, including consultations, hospitalization, and everything optical and dental. So it's really complete insurance that covers a person's essential needs, called Susu Vital.
If I am an African man or woman with no family members in the diaspora and want to subscribe to your offer, is it possible today?
It's now possible. At first it wasn't. Why? Because it was my personal story that inspired the creation of Susu. What you need to know is that I'm from the diaspora. I'm originally from Benin with a French nationality. And unfortunately, 5 years ago, I lost someone close to me, my father, who lived in Benin. And it was as a result of this that I imagined Susu. And the focus at the very beginning was quite diaspora-centered, and we were really only proposing to people in the diaspora to subscribe on behalf of relatives based in their country of origin. We realized that our service could also be of interest to local people who wanted to finance it themselves or with the help of relatives. So we recently started offering our services locally in our present countries, Côte d'Ivoire, Senegal and Cameroon.
What are the key elements that have contributed to the growth of your company today? Is it this interaction with local health services or the involvement of the diaspora?
Well, we attribute this to the fact that we are solving several problems in the diaspora and locally. So the first problem locally is that the penetration rate of health insurance is very low. That means 3%, which means that 97% of the population does not have access to an insurance solution to pay for their health expenses and must pay out of their own pockets. So that's the first problem we are solving by providing access to insurance and other solutions to these people. In addition, we have a target population, vulnerable people, pregnant women and people with chronic diseases. These people are even more excluded from the insurance system. They are not insurable. Unfortunately, insurers don't want them, and on top of that, they are left on their own in their healthcare journey. They don't have any answers to their basic questions about how to live better with their condition, what diet to follow, how to practice sports, and when you have diabetes, pregnant, and so on. So we provide solutions to all these problems. First of all, we give them a kind of coverage which is an alternative to insurance to help them pay for the expenses related to their medical conditions. And on top of that, we provide them with preventive advice and support with people who are there to answer questions that may arise daily. So that's the problem we're tackling locally. The second problem, which is related but also extremely important, is finance, because the big barrier to quality healthcare on the continent is that people cannot afford to pay for their health expenses. And we bring this innovation which allows relatives who have the financial means to do so to co-finance these needs with the beneficiaries.
Where does the investment in Susu come from? I saw that you had a fundraiser this year. What impact did it have on Susu's activities?
Indeed, we raised funds from private investors at the start and also from BPI France, the French government's investment bank, which supports startups and us. So we are delighted with this support. This money was significant in our development because at the beginning we started on a tiny scale in a single country, Côte d'Ivoire. And now with this money we have been able to open 2 new countries, 2 additional countries, Senegal and Cameroon, which we opened a few months ago.
Le Sénégal et le Cameroun qu'on a ouvert récemment, il y a quelques mois.
And in addition to that, it allowed us to finance the acquisition, in other words, marketing to create brand awareness in our existing markets where we are present, and set up B2B partnerships with local tech insurance players to improve the distribution and our operations. There's also the very important tech side. It has allowed us to continue to develop and enrich our technological platform, which is really at the heart of the system because it helps us to follow the beneficiary's care pathway. We will have an app where the beneficiary can subscribe to the service. Again, he or she has access to services, to preventive advice, and also has access to the chat. All of this was developed internally at Susu, and our funding made it possible.
Et le financement qu'on a reçu a permis de le faire.
Welcome to the second part of our show. We stay in Cameroon, where an NGO has initiated an ambitious project, the inclusion of visually impaired people through more innovative and diversified solutions than those they usually find within their reach. The objective is to restore hope, to bring people living with a visual impairment to regain confidence while changing the negative view of visual impairment and the potentialities of the disabled. This is a report by Abubakar Siddiq Munchili. A trip to his country of origin to meet young people suffering from visual impairment. Yvonne has dreamed of it for several years. This social entrepreneur from the Cameroonian diaspora in France was evacuated from his birth country at a very young age due to a severe eye disease.
Growing up in Cameroon, I didn't know what it meant to be handicapped. For me, a disabled person was someone who was in a wheelchair, someone who was lame, as we often say here. And when I left, I didn't quite understand it. It's when I came to France that I really discovered that disability restricts you to being part of the disabled community. I discovered a world that was a little sedentary, a world that was also not really aware of its potential, its talent, and a world that had no future.
Visually impaired himself, Yvonne was revolted by his experience, and he became determined to embark on this permanent fight to empower the visually impaired and blind by freeing them from the obstacles and other prejudices hindering their development.
For me, it was a revolt. That's how I slowly realized we had to create a project to get the visually impaired and blind out of their comfort zone, their home, their sedentary lifestyle. The aim is to make the visually impaired become actors of their own emancipation and aspirations, and that's why I always wanted to come back to Cameroon.
Returning to Cameroon after nearly 10 years of preparation to kickstart this long adventure beside the young visually impaired people across the African continent, Yvonne has chosen to do it through concrete solutions and a solid project. His NGO, DV Lancez-vous and Share the Cola concept, named after this fruit from the cola tree in the form of a nut, very popular in Africa, and which is eaten here in community together and has occupied an important place in the local traditions.
The cola is shared in the community. We decided to launch the Share the Cola concept because we learned with the cola and with the blind and visually impaired who teach us with their cola.
Well, I think that meetings like this are critical, and it brings light into our lives and remove the shadows, the darkness in the minds of people who live with a disability. This meeting in Yaoundé was a great opportunity to present the content of this initiative and to offer young people a whole plethora of activities for 2 days. Debates, screenings, workshops, coaching, field trips, among others. This is the ongoing work that has started a year ago.
And with a series of discussions, we talk, we share, We tell stories. We exchange stories about our lives and how we got to where we are now. Once, there was a young person who'd participated in an international podcast competition for the visually impaired, the blind and the sighted. He thought he couldn't do it. He did it online. He won first prize. That's what we mean by support.
Training is precisely at the heart of the strategy and actions of DV Lancez-vous, which intends to take advantage of the enormous opportunities offered by digital technologies today. An idea that Yves Wansi and his teammate Asher Gwen, a talented actor-artist also from the Cameroonian diaspora, have experimented. Introducing these young people to the theatre is the way to support this project.
So theatre is a great opportunity. They learn to speak in public, express themselves, and also it's some sort of physical awakening for their bodies. There are so many great tools we can give them.
The stakes are therefore high for this NGO committed through this model of raising awareness about visual impairment, using innovative actions for the inclusion of these people who have an outstretched hand towards society.
They must be taught to dream. I think when you have a disability, you don't dream. You don't have dreams anymore, whether it's in Cameroon, France, or anywhere. They believe it's their destiny. When you achieve something with your disability, you tell yourself that you can go beyond the limits of disability and you can do great things.
After Yaoundé in Cameroon, Yves Wansi and his team are already thinking of other African capitals and cities. In the line of sight, Cotonou in Benin or Dakar in Senegal, where they are keenly awaited by their younger peers. We get back to Bola Bardet, our guest, who tells us about the challenge of her insurance fintech startup, Susu, that of having a foothold in Europe with the African diaspora and a foothold on the continent. Difficulties that apparently do not scare investors, as they are quite interested in her new fundraising. Let's listen to her.
Bola Bardet, when did you notice these gaps in the health and social coverage of people from the diaspora and their relatives in Africa?
Ce qu'il faut savoir, c'est que je ne viens pas du domaine de la santé.
You need to know that I don't come from a health or insurance background. I unfortunately fell into it through a personal tragedy that I experienced. Well, my father, who died at age 65, had high blood pressure in Benin at the time. He had no insurance to cover his health needs. And on top of that, as I was saying, he was completely on his own regarding the basic issues that could help him live better with his condition.
Avec sa condition. Et j'ai surtout pris conscience.
And so it was his death that made me conscious of the problem, especially since I myself, a member of the diaspora, could not help him. And I realized that I could have sent money through money transfer channels, but that money would not have solved the problem, which was a problem of access to quality healthcare for him. That's how the idea of Susu came about, and I became aware of the local health challenges in our countries, and the challenges that the diaspora also has in caring for their loved ones.
But it took some courage because you studied at HEC Business School, you had a well-established finance career and worked in private banking. How did you find the resources to set up this company?
It was obvious from my story because my father was dear to me, so for me the question didn't even arise. Besides that, indeed, I had already been an entrepreneur for a few years. I had created a consulting company and I know what entrepreneurship is. I knew when I started the Susu adventure that even if the level of challenge was not the same, Susu is much more challenging than anything I've ever done before in terms of entrepreneurship.
How did your training and professional experience help you kickstart this project?
I graduated from a business school, a very generalist course. You learn about all the different aspects of entrepreneurship, including management, finance, economics, human resources, marketing and sales. I had at least a technical background that allowed me to start from scratch. On top of that, as an entrepreneur, you know how to manage to get by. I think it's an ability that I have inside me and which has enabled me to, well, say, to find solutions to the problems that have arisen up to now.
How do you see Susu's partnerships with traditional insurers? Are they interested in this project?
Tout à fait. Susu, pour eux, est une vraie aubaine.
Absolutely. Susu is a real godsend for them because it allows them to increase their turnover, which is relatively small. Again, the insurance covers only 3% of the population. Through Susu, they will look for market share outside the country, since it is financed by people who live outside the country. It gives them a guarantee that their funds will be collected. A guarantee they do not have when dealing directly with individuals, who often come from the informal sector, so they don't necessarily have pay slips or an address. Susu is therefore a real opportunity for them to generate a turnover from clients who may be a little more solvent than the clients they usually have.
Vous avez passé votre jeunesse au Bénin.
You spent your youth in Benin, but you were born in France. Today, you go back to Africa as an entrepreneur.
Est-ce que c'est difficile de revenir ainsi?
Is it challenging to come back to the continent with a new experience from the West and to find Africa with a healthcare system that may not have evolved much?
Un système de santé qui n'a peut-être pas tellement évolué.
C'est très challengeant. Effectivement, aujourd'hui, Susu...
It is very challenging. Indeed, today, Susu, we have one foot in Europe because we address the African diaspora there, and one foot in Africa. It allows us to see the gap that exists in terms of support for entrepreneurs between France and Africa.
Entre la France et l'Afrique. La France, je disais qu'on était soutenu par la BPI.
In France, I said that BPI France supported us. In Africa, we're not supported by anyone. And also we have important infrastructure issues because infrastructure is fundamental, the basic ingredient for an entrepreneur. So we have challenges that we have to deal with every day. From Paris, we have to deal with power cuts and power outages, things that seem relatively trivial to us in Europe at the moment, but are realities that an entrepreneur has to deal with daily in the field. So these are additional difficulties that come on top of the inherent problem of any entrepreneur. So I realize this daily. And what about the health system? Yes, I realize this all the more because when you live in France, a country with a formidable health system, you can measure the gap between the two, which is abysmal. This health system is that of African countries. I was in Benin this summer with my son who is ill. I realized how difficult it was to provide him with primary care between the interminable waiting times in hospitals and clinics and the difficulty of finding quality staff who have empathy and respond to clients' needs. These are things we're trying to correct at our small level. We hope to grow as we go along and to have a lot of support to achieve our mission.
Hence the new fundraising, and you are in the middle of the process, aren't you? How is it going, and how are you going to use these new funds?
Ça se passe bien. Une levée de fonds, c'est long, ça prend du temps.
It's going well. Fundraising is long, it takes time, it's a lot of energy and a lot of effort. So it's an ordeal for an entrepreneur. So we are in the middle of it. It started at the beginning of the summer. Then we were in discussions with investors. And the aim is to develop our services in West Africa over the next 24 months. So we'll continue offering our services in new destinations and countries. We'll continue to build our digital platform, which is really at the heart of what we do and will enable us to provide our service to more and more people on a larger scale. And finally, we will set up partnerships with insurance players, such as mutual insurance companies, groups and employers, to provide the service to as many people as possible. This is an essential fundraising exercise for us, and we hope to complete it by the end of this year.
Bola Bardet, thank you very much.
Thank you, Laurence.
Well, that's it. Initiative Africa is over for today. You can, of course, find Bola Bardet's interview and the replay of our programs on our website, africaonair.com, and feel free to follow us on all our social media channels. Also, feel free to share, like, and comment with the hashtag Initiative Africa. And don't forget, next week, same time, same channel, I'll see you again with a new edition of Business Africa. Take care and see you next week. Goodbye.